Okay, so now that we have this thing working, right? Now we need to go ahead and I need to show you guys something. Let's go back to we're on our networking service, right? And remember earlier we did the networking service with our method, fetch API response, and we did a mock service, right? With hard-coded hard-coded input, right? Um what we do need, let me go back here. Yeah, so our problem is here in the view controller and the view model, right? We're creating so our view controller should not have the responsibility of creating the view model, right? That's what we're doing. We're creating an instance of a view model. That's bad, right? All right. It's bad because we're tied here, okay? And this should not have the view model should not have the responsibility of creating the networking service, right? So people said, well, why can't it have that? Because it's tightly coupled. Remember when I talked to you about when I used the Hulk and Iron Man analogy? Well, this is it right here. Changing a change to the view model, right? Is too closely tied to your networking service. Okay. Now, does this work the way it is? Yes. When it starts getting bigger and there's more functionality, you can run into problems, right? Now, granted, decoupling can make your project more complex and it's harder to trace some of the logic. But this is the way it's done in the real world, right? So we need to not create this in the view model, right? So let us go back to our networking service and we can start fixing some of this, okay? So we have this right here, right? Networking service, networking service. Eventually, at some point, we're going to be swapping this functionality out, right? But we're also going to set its default to networking service, right? So what we want to do is we create a protocol where they are both of a certain type, right? So here we go. We're going to create this protocol. This protocol is going to be, and by the way, they're both going to have this signature, right? Function fetch API response. Okay. So now we have protocols right here. And in this, we have network servicing protocol, right? Network service API response. So let's go ahead and let's do this, right? So you would say protocol, network service, network service, not for API response. Not response, response. Okay. And that's the protocol. And we're going to pass this. So every object that uses this protocol, that conforms this protocol, uses a method with this signature. Not necessarily the same implementation, this signature. Okay. And as a result, it allows you to interchange or swap out functionality, right? I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to say colon networking service for API response. And you aren't going to have any issues. Why? Because you have the method. Now, let me show you something. What happens if I comment this out? You're going to get an error, right? And it's going to ask to put that there, right? Fetch API response, right? So just wanted to let you know that, right? Then you can put your implementation in there, right? So this is what it called. This is what happens when you have to conform to a protocol, right? So let me go ahead and take that out, right? And we're gonna do the same thing down here. This must conform to this protocol, which it already does because it has a fetch API response function. Networking service for API response. And of course, that works. Okay, so now, and this should not break anything. Not yet. Right? So our methods work. UI, right? AX, right? Okay. Now, let's move on. So we have our networking response, we have our networking service, and all of this is conforming, right? Now let's go over here to our view model. A problem with the view model is this, right? And we're gonna have 3 files to modify, right? Four files actually. View model, our main view controller, our dependency provider, where we have to add in the functionality there, and then we have to go to our scene delegate, where we have to add a line of code there that will inject the default functionality for our networking service or networking service for API response. I know that sounds confusing. Sorry. But let's get down to business. So right here we have networking service. Instead of making this networking service, it is not networking service no anymore. Okay. We are not creating an instance. Okay. We are referencing its protocol for which it's which it adheres to. Now it says you have no initializers. Guess what? We're going to create some right now, right? And it's and Xcode like auto completed that for us, but it's initializers, networking service type, networking service API response, and we access this and we set this to networking service, right? Okay, which means we have to change some things in our main see right there. That's what we have to change, right? And there's a lot more to change in here, right? So view model we cannot set an instance of it right here. Give me a second. Okay, so what we need to do is Jesus, why did it do that? Okay, right here. Right? But we aren't setting it. There we go. We have to do that. Okay. So now we get down here, and now our view model is like, oh, this is nil. This is nil. Right? What we have to do is we have to I personally am I don't want to force unwrap. What I want to do is optional chaining. And I had a video that explains optional chaining. And basically it sets it up to where it runs, but it understands the caveat that this could be optional. This could be optional, right? And same thing over here. We're not going to force unwrap because this can be optional, right? That's the question mark says. It's potentially optional. Again, okay. Let me see something real quick. And of course, this count, we don't have anything. It's 0, right? Here, this can be optional, right? instead of being forcibly unwrapped, right? And so now, well, we still have this, right? Same thing. This can be optional, not forcibly unwrapped, right? So all that's done, but this is not going to work yet, right? Because we in somewhere around here, you have to set the dependency, right? This has to be initialized. It's stated, but it's not initialized. That means a value isn't given to ViewModel, right? So what we do is we create a class, and this class is called Dependency Provider, right? I'm not a class, but an object, which is a struct, right? So now I want you to look at this. This is how we're gonna set the everything up for this. Okay, static var service, right, is of course networking service for API response. And these are computed properties. I've explained what a computed property is. You have to reference prior videos, networking service. And see right now, this is what is this is initializing the value that will be passed to the view controller, right? As you will see, the root view controller, which is main view controller. Okay, so let's do this again. Static var view model. View model is of type main view model, right? And now we return main view model, right? Networking service self dot service. Okay. See, you see how we're doing all this? We're setting this value for view model, right? Not set here, right? Not set here. It's not set in here. It's set in here. Okay. And static var view controller. Static var view controller. See that? Is of type main view controller. Okay. Right. Let VC equal UI storyboard, right? And we'll say name and bundle, right? Name is the main storyboard, okay? And that's with our storyboard and all, our main storyboard. That's the default name is, right? Bundles nil. We don't have a bundle, right? We can touch on that later in another lesson. Instantiate view controller. Instantiate initial view controller right here. Okay. As right, as main view controller. Okay, so this is where we designate what our main view controller is going to be, right? Okay, VC dot view model equals what? View model. VC view model, that means the view model that is in this main controller, right, is going to be equal to this view model. Main view model, right? Right. Okay. And then we're going to return VC. Okay. So we have that, right? Okay. Right. But build successful, but this isn't done. This isn't done. we have to go to the scene delegates, right? Right? And the scene delegate allows us to set everything, right? So we say window dot root view controller equals dependency provider. This is our reference to the dependency provider dot view controller. Okay. And this abstracts everything, right? So now we should have this working, right? AX. And as you can see, everything works. But let's go back. Everything works, and we have not created a networking service, right? We're using and we're using the protocol, right? To reference it. And when we come here to our view controller, if necessary, again, we are not creating the main view model here. Okay. We're doing all of that. We're injecting all of that in our dependency provider and using that dependency provider in the scene delegate, right? We should not be creating, remember this, you should not be creating networking services in your view model, and you should not be creating view models in your view controller. Okay. That's what your dependency provider is for. And yeah. So now that you understand, if this is still confusing to you, you need to go back and reference how I explained it in the introductory video. And you can, download this project from GitHub and go over it and look at it over and over again till it clicks. All right. But this is how you operate in the real world, right? You're not going to be creating your networking service in your view model. You're not going to be creating your view model in your view controller, right? You have to separate those responsibilities. So next we're gonna go in and then we're going to we're gonna show you how we mock an API call, right? So okay, on to the next.